I'll be here. If y'all got here early tonight, and most of you have, you probably saw the transit of Venus. This particular slide is a stylized picture of Venus, actually taken out here at Bernheim. And Venus is usually a bright evening star or a bright morning star. Right now, since it's passed across the sun in 2 weeks, it's going to be a really bright morning star. That black dot down there is actually Venus passing in front of the sun. This is actually called a transit. Tonight it started at 2:04 and continued till the sun dropped below the tree line here. It's still going on right now. When this happens, they come in groups of 8. We had one 8 years ago. We had this one now. We won't have another one for 105 years or in 2117. Venus is not the only thing that transits the sun. The planet Mercury does, and much more often. But remember how big Venus was on that previous slide? This slide here, that little bitty dot, is Mercury. Mercury is a lot closer to the sun and a lot smaller planet. There's one other thing that transits the sun, and that's our own moon. About back on May the 20th, we actually had an eclipse of the moons, and it's actually transits between the Earth and the sun. In this case, it was pretty far out in its orbit, and all we got was an annular eclipse instead of an eclipse that completely covered the sun. The first observation of a transit of the sun was done by Jeremy Horrocks back in 1639, and he actually projected an image on the in a darkened room on the screen. And these two spots here are the two drawings he traced on there. He had very primitive telescopes. The telescope had only been perfected for 30 years. He had a friend, William Crabtree, who was in a different town. He did the same thing, except he didn't really make any drawings. So these two people were the first ones that actually observed the transit of Venus, and they did it in England. And at first, they didn't even think there was going to be one. Let's switch over to the transits of 1761 to 69 and go with the travails of a fellow named Le Gentil, a Frenchman. He was going to go observe the eclipse. This path here, it was going to go to Pondicherry, India. Got on there. The French, the 7-year war with France and England was still going on. Got there, and the English had taken it over. So he decided to wait the next 8 years and go and see it again on the next time around. So in that 8 years, instead of going back home, he spent his time around the Indian Ocean, mapping the Madagascar Islands and others there, and perfecting his equipment. And when the day dawned and the transit come, it was bright and clear early in the morning, but right at the time the eclipse was supposed to start, the clouds moved in and he missed it. So both times he never got there. And so he decided to go back home. First thing happened, he got a bad case of dysentery, which delayed him over a year. When he did get back home, his family had declared him dead. His wife had remarried, and they looted his estate. So if old Le Gentil had any luck at all, it was all bad luck. But happily, he got the king involved in the courts, and he did get his estate back. He remarried and lived to the middle of the French Revolution. There was another Frenchman who went to Siberia to observe the eclipse, or the transit, and he was setting up practice in the 2 weeks before the eclipse, and these big floods in the rivers came up, so he couldn't get to it. And the locals there saw that he was doing this, so they blamed it on him. You have to have a science to blame thing on. So they got their pitchforks and torches and chased him out, and he barely escaped with his life. We'll switch now to just what's coming up to view later on this fall. This is the planet Mars. Mars is the red planet. Red because all the oxygen in it is tied up in its rocks as rust. This is Saturn. Saturn will be with us through September. This is what most people think is the most beautiful planet. If you get a chance to go to any public observation or whatever, this is a good time to see it because its rings are really opening up and really make a great show. Saturn is unique in one thing. Its density is lighter than water. If you could put it in a tub, it would actually float. When you take it out of the tub, it would leave a ring around it. This is the moon. The moon will be available, month after month. It goes through these phases. Even very small telescopes, you can see literally hundreds of thousands of craters, and just study them there. As one of the astronauts said, magnificent desolation when you landed on it. Other things visible the rest of the year are open star clusters. This here is the Pleiades. This picture was taken by a member of the Louisville Astronomical Society, Ron Yates. And this is also called the Seven Sisters. This is easily visible with the unaided eye and just a beautiful sight in the binoculars. These are nebulas. There's many nebulous, many nebulas out there. Most of them you need a telescope to see, but this fellow here is the Great Nebula in Orion, which you can actually pick out with binoculars. It'll be much smaller than this, but this is an active region, and there's a lot of stars actually being born right here inside this nebula. It's and the last thing out here, this is the Great Orion Nebula. This will be visible this fall. If you can see this under dark skies with your unaided eye. This is the farthest the human eye can see with an unaided eye. This galaxy is 2 million light years away. So when you look at it, you're looking at it like it was 2 million years ago. And Louisville is fortunate. It has three great areas, locations to study astronomy. This here is the Green Science Hall down at the U of L, and it has the Roth Planetarium in it. It's one of the really better planetariums locally, probably within a 200-mile radius. They put on shows there, and they really come out. Like I say, I am with the Louisville Astronomical Society. We've been around since 1933. We did this current transit of Venus up here, and we do a lot of outreach programs. We did over 100 programs last year, and approximately 6,000 people have viewed our programs and our public observations out at the park. And finally, Bernheim. We do a lot more night programs out here right now. I'm the unofficial astronomer here. I do a monthly program. We do full moon hikes. And when it's dark out here in the summer, you can still see the Milky Way this close to Shepherdsville and Louisville because of the light dome. You can still see it. When you get the chance, any time at night, look up in the sky and see what you see.